Hello and welcome. Today we're taking a look at the new production Polish wire folding stocks and specifically their sling situation. I believe as a cost-cutting measure, these are now intended to be used with a sling mount plate sandwiched in between the grip and the receiver. So if you're looking for an out-of-the-box solution, just buy that and it'll do it for you. Otherwise, you could just bojangle a piece of metal onto the slot on the side and roll with that. However, if you're like me and you want to have one configured more the way they originally were, then here's how I went about mine. I used the Toth Tools AK rivet jaws as well as a broken Hungarian AMD 65 sling mount and an AKM trigger guard rivet. Now both of those items required modifications, so let's talk about caveats. First, the mount itself, I used an AMD 65 mount that was originally intended to be inserted into a slot cut into the side of the sheet metal receiver and then butterflied on the inside. You can also get a similar style mount for the Yugo M70 or milled receivers. Any of those should work, but all will require modification because they're too wide. You could also use a regular AK fixed stock sling loop and fabricate a tab, because there's no way to modify the fixed stock tab to work due to its width and existing holes. Either way, the first thing I did was size down the tab and round off the end of it until it would fit into the slot on the stock mount. I also had to bend the tab to be more straight than it originally was so that it would sit deep enough. Once it was shaped and sized correctly, I marked where the holes lined up and drilled a hole in the tab using a 7/64 drill bit, which was the closest size I had to the original hole in the stock. Later on, both of these were opened up to 1/8 to make seating the rivet easier. Now the rivet itself. I chose to use an AK trigger guard rivet. It was a good length, but my tab only had one side, so that may be less ideal depending upon the thickness of your tabs once folded. Regardless, it will need to be turned down to the correct size. I didn't have access to a lathe, so I chucked it up in a drill and used hand files to reduce the diameter until it would fit. Now here's where a happy accident took place. Because I turned down the rivet, the head tapered to a thicker section and kind of acted like a countersunk rivet, which worked well because the inside of the stock hole is countersunk for some reason. In original photos of at least these German examples, the head of the rivet is facing the outside, but I chose to turn mine around to better match the countersunk divot. With all that situated, I painted the modified parts and endeavored to use the Toth Tools AK rivet jaws to crush the rivet, only to realize they were too thick to fit into the slot where the tab mounted. At this point, I should have used some small piece of metal to make up the space and just crush the rivet. Instead, I mounted just the dome side of the jaws in a vise and used a punch to flatten the rivet 90% of the way before giving up and actually finding a piece of metal to use to crush it completely, like I should have just done from the beginning. And with that, it's done. Should it have just come from the factory like this? Yes. Is it worth it to do all of this? Not really. I'm certainly not going to come out ahead on this even with making a video, but now I have one more tool at my disposal and more skills than I did at the beginning. One day I may graduate beyond Garage Monkey just yet. Either way, hopefully this provides some insight or at least answers some questions if you have one of these stocks and were thinking similar things as me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.